While Donald Trump and Xi Jinping were sitting in Beijing declaring that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open, Iran was in that same strait doing the opposite. In a single operational window on May 13, 2026, while the two most powerful leaders on Earth were making statements about freedom of navigation, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps carried out two separate maritime attacks that should terrify every shipping company, every oil trader, every government that depends on the Gulf for its energy supply, and every ordinary person who has noticed that gas prices are not coming down. Attack 1. Iranian commandos boarded and seized a weapons storage vessel anchored 40 miles off the coast of the United Arab Emirates and towed it toward Iranian territorial waters. Attack 2. The IRGC sank an Indian-flagged cargo ship off the coast of Oman using what maritime security analysts believe was a drone or missile strike. One seizure, one sinking. Same day, same operational window. While the summit in Beijing was producing statements about keeping the strait open, the UAE called it a grave threat to international navigation. India called it unacceptable. The UK's Maritime Trade Operations Centre issued emergency alerts to all vessels in the region. Shipping insurers immediately began recalculating war risk premiums for every vessel anywhere near the Gulf of Oman. And Iran said nothing. Because Iran does not need to say anything. The actions speak louder than any statement ever could. Tonight we are going to break down exactly what happened, why these two attacks together are more dangerous than either would be alone, and what the Strait of Hormuz now looks like for the global economy. Before we go further, drop a comment right now. How many ships has Iran seized or sunk in the strait since February 28th? Most people watching this do not know the real number. Let us find out at the end of this video. Start with the first attack because it is the most strategically sophisticated. Most people have never heard of a floating armory. But every major shipping company, every maritime security firm, and every navy operating in the Gulf of Oman knows exactly what they are and why they matter. When Somali piracy surged in the late 2000s and early 2010s, when armed pirates in small, fast boats were hijacking commercial vessels in international waters, holding crews hostage for ransom, and terrorizing the shipping lanes of the Indian Ocean, the maritime industry needed a solution. That solution was the floating armory. A floating armory is a vessel that anchors in or near international waters and serves as a weapons depot for private maritime security teams. When a cargo ship or oil tanker needs armed security guards aboard for a dangerous transit, the security team picks up their weapons from the floating armory before the voyage. When the transit is complete, they return the weapons, because most coastal states prohibit armed vessels from entering their territorial waters without extensive permits. The floating armory system became the backbone of private maritime security across the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Gulf of Oman. It is not glamorous. It is not widely reported. But it is what keeps commercial shipping moving through dangerous waters by ensuring security teams have the tools they need to protect the vessels and crews in their care. On May 13th, the Honduras-flagged vessel Hui Chuan, which was operating as a floating armory anchored 40 miles northeast of Fujairah, was boarded by Iranian military personnel. The crew of the Hui Chuan had no warning. Iranian commandos appeared. The ship was taken, and within hours, the UK's Maritime Trade Operations Centre confirmed that the vessel was bound for Iranian territorial waters. By removing the Hui Chuan from its anchorage, Iran did not just seize a ship. It removed a node from the private security network that protects commercial vessels transiting the most dangerous maritime zone on Earth. For shipping companies and their insurers, that is not an abstraction. It means fewer options for arming security guards on voyages through waters where, as the same day immediately proved, the threat of attack is not theoretical. Now the second attack. The Indian-flagged vessel Haji Ali left Berbera port in Somalia on May 6th with a destination of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. It was carrying livestock, a cargo ship moving animals across the Gulf, not a military vessel, not a sanctions violator, not a ship with any connection to the geopolitical crisis unfolding around it. At 3:30 in the morning on May 13th, in the same operational window as the Hui Chuan seizure, the Haji Ali was struck off the coast of Oman. a fire broke out on board. Maritime security reports describe a suspected explosion consistent with a drone or missile strike. The vessel's crew, 14 Indian nationals, had seconds to respond. They abandoned ship. The Haji Ali sank. Oman Coast Guard units reached the crew in time. All 14 Indian sailors were rescued and transferred to Diba port. India's Ministry of External Affairs responded publicly, calling the attack unacceptable and condemning what it described as continued attacks on commercial shipping and civilian mariners. The UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs called it a grave threat to international navigation and an escalation in critical waterways. The method of attack, whether drone, missile, mine, or some other means, has not been officially confirmed. But the maritime security community has reached its own assessment. The combination of timing, location, and the nature of the incident points in one direction: the IRGC. Now step back and understand what these two attacks together actually mean. This is not two random incidents that happen to occur on the same day. This is a coordinated operational message. Attack 1 removes the private security infrastructure that commercial ships depend on to safely transit the Gulf of Oman. By seizing the floating armory, Iran effectively tells every shipping company in the world, the weapons your security teams need to protect your vessels are no longer available at their usual location. The private security network that kept you moving through these waters is now one node smaller. Attack 2 immediately demonstrates why that matters. On the same day the security infrastructure is degraded, a ship is attacked and sunk. The sequence is not coincidental. It is doctrine. Iran is systematically dismantling every layer of protection that keeps commercial shipping moving through the most critical energy corridor on Earth. First, close the strait to most commercial traffic. Second, seize vessels that try to operate under the old rules. Third, remove the private security infrastructure that might allow shipping to continue. Fourth, sink ships that continue anyway. Each attack makes the next attack more effective, because each one reduces the options available to shipping companies trying to operate in the region. Tell me in the comments, do you think global shipping companies will keep sending vessels through the Gulf of Oman after today? Because that decision, made by shipping company executives in boardrooms in Athens, Tokyo, London, and Singapore, is one of the most important economic decisions being made in the world right now. Here is the detail that makes the timing of these attacks historically extraordinary. These two attacks happened on May 13th. That was the day Donald Trump arrived in Beijing to meet Xi Jinping. The primary agenda of the summit, as stated publicly by both the White House and the Chinese Foreign Ministry, included the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and the need to keep it open for global energy flows. The White House readout from the summit stated explicitly that both Trump and Xi agreed the Strait of Hormuz must remain open to support the free flow of energy. Xi told Trump, according to the White House's own statement, that China opposes the militarization of the strait. Both leaders agreed. Both leaders issued statements. Both leaders called for open navigation. And while their statements were being written up, while their diplomatic teams were crafting the language about freedom of navigation and global energy security, the IRGC was seizing the Hui Chuan 40 miles off Fujairah and sinking the Haji Ali in the Gulf of Oman. Iran did not wait for the summit to end. Iran did not pause operations for the diplomatic moment. Iran did not adjust its operational tempo 1 degree in response to the most important bilateral summit of 2026. That is not an accident. That is a message. The message is, your summits do not determine what happens in this waterway. We do. And then, in a detail that adds one more layer to Iran's message, Chinese vessels began transiting the strait under new Iranian protocols after Beijing requested special access. China and the U.S. both sat at the summit and agreed the strait must be open. Then, China's ships were given special permission to use it, and everyone else's ships are still subject to seizure and attack. The economic consequences of what is happening near the Strait of Hormuz right now are becoming impossible to ignore. Oil prices have been above $100 a barrel for weeks. Brent crude closed at $109 recently, more than 50% above its pre-war level of roughly $70. The bond market is now reacting to what the oil market has been screaming for months. The benchmark U.S. 10-year Treasury yield rose nearly 24 basis points in a single week, approaching 4.6%. When Treasury yields rise, every consumer loan tied to them rises too. Mortgages, auto loans, credit card rates. The interest you pay on every debt you carry. A former senior U.S. national security official told CNBC this week that the oil market may be missing as much as 100 million barrels per week because of the Hormuz closure. He said the situation is becoming dire. He said that oil prices will almost certainly remain in the range of $80 to $100 per barrel through the rest of the year and into 2027, even if the strait reopens in early June. The damage to supply chains, insurance markets, and shipping infrastructure is already done. It does not reverse the moment a ceasefire is signed. Every shipping company that reroutes its vessels around the Cape of Good Hope adds approximately 10 to 14 days to every voyage. Every additional day at sea is additional fuel, additional crew costs, additional wear on the vessel. Those costs go on to the price of every good carried: food, electronics, clothing, medicine. Everything that moves by sea through the Gulf of Oman is now more expensive to deliver, and therefore more expensive for you to buy. This is not a geopolitical abstraction. It is showing up in what Americans pay at the pump, at the grocery store, and in their monthly mortgage statements. Now let us look at the full picture of what Iran has done to commercial shipping since February 28th. The Haji Ali and the Hui Chuan are not isolated cases. In April, the IRGC seized the Panamanian-flagged MSC Francesca in the Strait. It also seized a vessel called the Epaminondas. The previous week, before the May 13th attacks, Iran captured the tanker Ocean Koi in the Gulf of Oman, claiming it was attempting to disrupt Iranian oil exports. The U.S. had sanctioned the Ocean Koi in February as part of Iran's shadow fleet. South Korea reported that a cargo ship was struck by unidentified aircraft in the Hormuz region on a Sunday in mid-May. Qatar reported that a freighter arriving from Abu Dhabi was hit by a drone in Qatari waters. The IRGC also reportedly infiltrated Kuwait. Kuwaiti authorities arrested 4 individuals who allegedly confessed to belonging to the IRGC and being tasked with infiltrating Bubiyan Island to carry out hostile acts. 2 of the infiltrators and 1 Kuwaiti service member were wounded in the clash. Count it up. Since February 28th, Iran has seized or sunk multiple commercial vessels, struck ships in waters belonging to South Korea, Qatar, and Oman, attempted to infiltrate Kuwait with IRGC operatives, fired cruise missiles at U.S. Navy destroyers, and established a new government agency, the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, to charge ships a fee to transit what is supposed to be international waterway. All of this while a ceasefire technically remains in place. All of this while diplomatic summits produce statements about keeping the strait open. All of this while Trump and Xi were in Beijing agreeing, for the cameras, that freedom of navigation is important. The gap between what is being said in the world summit rooms and what is happening in the waters off Oman and Fujairah is the most important story in global geopolitics right now, and it just got wider. What happens next depends on a decision being made right now. Not in Washington, not in Beijing, not in Tehran, but in the boardrooms of the world's largest shipping companies. Every major shipping operator is running the same calculation tonight. Is it worth continuing to send vessels through the Gulf of Oman when the private security infrastructure has been degraded, when oil tankers and cargo ships are being attacked with drones and missiles, when the floating armory that your security teams depended on has just been seized by Iranian commandos and towed away? Or do you reroute everything around the Cape of Good Hope, accept the additional 2 weeks of voyage time and the additional cost, and wait for someone in a diplomatic meeting to resolve a crisis that has now been running for more than 2 months with no resolution in sight? The shipping companies that make that decision, to reroute or to continue, will determine whether the Hormuz crisis deepens further or whether some level of commercial traffic eventually finds a way to continue. And Iran knows this. Iran is not trying to win a naval battle against the United States. It is trying to make operating near the strait so dangerous, so expensive, and so uncertain that the global shipping industry makes the decision for everyone. If ships stop coming, if war risk insurance premiums rise to the point where voyages become commercially unviable, then Iran has achieved the closure of the strait more effectively than any military force ever could, without firing another shot. The Huichuan is in Iranian waters tonight. The Haji Ali is at the bottom of the Gulf of Oman. And in boardrooms across the globe, the spreadsheets are being updated. This is the intel room. If this video showed you something about what is happening in the Gulf that the headlines are not putting together clearly, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. The Strait of Hormuz is the most consequential geographic choke point on Earth right now, and it is getting more dangerous every single day. We will be watching.